Here's the truth most candidates don't want to hear. In European private equity, language isn't a nice to have. It's part of the job. Not just underwriting spreadsheets. You're negotiating with founders in Munich, aligning boards in Paris, and recruiting CEOs in Milan. If you can't operate in the room, in their language, you're competing with people who can. Today, I'm going to show you exactly when language is a hard requirement, where there are real exceptions, and how to build a credible path into PE, even if you don't speak anything beyond English right now. I'm Stefan, co-founder of Break Into PE. I started my career in investment banking at Morgan Stanley in London and then moved into private equity at HG Capital. Over the last few years, our program has helped hundreds of candidates land their dream jobs across Europe, including at funds like KKR, Blackstone, EQT, Bain Capital, and many more. We've seen every path, every detour, and yes, every language dilemma. In today's video, I'll walk you through the practical playbook, where language is non-negotiable, what London funds really expect, how to position your profile, and how to close the gap if you're starting from zero. Let's anchor one principle first. For Continental funds, language equals access. If you want to join a fund in Germany, you're expected to operate in German, in France in French, in Italy in Italian. Could there be an exception where a fund flexes for an extraordinary candidate? Sure, but if you're betting your career on the 1%, that's not a strategy, that's a lottery ticket. Deals are local, regulation is local, employment law, customer contracts, union dynamics, distributor relationships, these play out in local language. If you're on the deal team and can't do diligence in that language, someone else has to do it for you. Funds don't love that dependency. Now, there is a gradient. You don't need to have grown up in Hamburg to work in Frankfurt. We've had candidates who moved to Germany in their teens or early 20s, studied or worked there for years, and built strong professional German. They weren't native, but they could run diligence calls, lead management meetings, and draft emails the GC wouldn't redline to death. That's the bar. The test isn't, can you order gelato in Milan? The test is, can you pressure test a cohort analysis with a finance director in Italian and leave the room with answers and respect? There's also variation across roles. Portfolio operations teams sometimes operate more in English inside pan-European platforms, especially for value creation projects where the core team is multinational. But even there, the moment you step into plant floors, local sales huddles, or union discussion, language matters. If your dream is true, deal execution in Paris or Munich, treat the language as a core technical. So what about London? This is where it gets interesting. London is the most international PE hub in Europe, and English is the default in the office. However, many of the top platforms based in London invest across the continent. If a fund doesn't have a local office in, say, Spain or Italy, and they pursue those markets out of London, business-fluent additional languages become a real differentiator. Think of firms like H&F or Thoma Bravo, with a single European office in London. They still buy businesses in Germany, France, the Nordics, Spain, Italy. If you bring one or two European languages at a business-fluent level, you aren't just a strong analyst, you are a bridge into deal flow. There's also a practical point. Headhunters in London are quietly segmenting their shortlists by language coverage. If a mandate leans toward Dach, French or Italian deal flow, the shortlist tilts toward candidates who can run point in those markets. Spanish can be valuable too, especially for funds that occasionally look at Iberia or from London, explore LATAM adjacency. The English-only idea works for certain UK-centric mandates and some sector funds with heavy English-speaking management teams. But the moment the investment thesis crosses the channel, extra languages move from nice to decisive. If you're thinking, okay, but I don't speak any of these, here's your plan. First, choose your lane. Are you committed to a specific country fund, say in Germany, or are you aiming for a London-based pan-European platform? If it's the former, you need to learn the local language at a working professional level before you be competitive on the deal team. That doesn't mean C2 perfection, but it does mean you can run diligence calls, read and annotate commercial agreements, and present an investment thesis without switching to English every second sentence. Make sure next 6 to 9 months are a focus sprint. Regular speaking reps with a native tutor, weekly business reads in the language, and professional writing practice, that all helps. If your lane is London with continental exposure, prioritize one additional language that aligns with the largest pools of deal activity. German, French, or Italian are the most useful on average. Spanish can be strong again if you're targeting Spain or funds with Latin American crossover, but otherwise German, French, and Italian are the key languages. Get to business fluent as fast as you can. You don't need to sound like a news anchor. You need to run a vendor call without draining the room's energy or missing key nuances. It's less about grammar, perfection, and more about functional control under time pressure. Also, keep in mind, headhunters may test this. Expect a portion of your screener to flip into the target language. If your profile says business fluent, be prepared to carry the rest of the call in that language. And don't just practice textbooks. Practice deal language, pricing power, mid-market distribution, valuation methodologies. Those words won't appear in Duolingo. So let me address a myth that trips people up. The Nordics are fine with English. Sometimes in some teams on some projects, yes. There are English-first environments, especially within global funds or tech-focused strategies. But if you're aiming for true local market coverage in Stockholm, Copenhagen, Oslo, or Helsinki, the safest assumption is that local language helps a lot and is often expected. If a fund's website, portfolio, press releases, and portfolio governance are mostly in the local language, treat English only as the exception, not the rule. So how do you close the gap quickly? Create a language plus market immersion plan. Pick one sector you'd happily invest in. Software, healthcare, specialist manufacturing, and do all your daily reps in that domain. Read trade news in the target language for 10 minutes each morning. Once a week, record a 3-minute elevator pitch on a live target in that language. Again, use it in a business context. Once a month, write a one-page memo in the language, focused on investment thesis, risks, and value creation levers. So you pair that with a weekly session with a native tutor, who ideally has a business background if possible, so they can also correct you on the business terms that actually matter. And in 90 days, you'll be miles ahead of someone doing generic lessons. Another lever is geography. If you can take a 6-month secondment, a visiting analyst stint, or even a temporary relocation within your bank or consulting firm into the target country, do it. Nothing spikes language like being forced to use it at work. And when you apply to that local fund later, you're not the person learning French, you're the person who worked in Paris. Funds trust track record more than intent. There's also a timing dimension. If you're 12 weeks from a recruiting cycle and you don't have the language, don't spray applications at Paris, Frankfurt, or Milan deal teams hoping for a miracle. Channel your energy into London platforms that welcome English plus your current strength. Let's recap the core takeaways. First, Continental Europe. Assume the local language is a requirement for deal roles. Exceptions exist, but they're rare and unpredictable. Don't plan your career around them. Second, in London, English carries you far inside the office, but additional European languages are a clear edge, especially for funds without local offices that invest across the continent. Third, credibility beats labels. Replace intermediate with proof. Live or simulated diligence in the language. Sector-specific vocabulary and examples that show you can run the process. Fourth, sequence your path. If the language gap is too wide for the cycle, target London mandates aligned with your strength now and build the language to open continental options for the future. Finally, treat language like a technical skill. Daily reps, deal context, and real outputs. Pitches, memos, calls, so you can grow fast and show evidence. European PE isn't the US playbook with different accents. It's deeply local, relationship-driven, and often multilingual. The candidates who win don't just learn the LBO, they learn how to earn trust in the language of the room. If that sounds daunting, good. Hard things are worth doing, especially when they compound your edge for the next 15 years. If this was useful, hit like, drop a comment with the markets you're targeting, and subscribe for more Europe-specific PE prep. And if you want direct feedback on your profile, your target list, and on a concrete language and market plan, how you can break into private equity in Europe, head to breakintope.com and book a free consultation with our team. We tell you exactly where you stand and what you need to change so your next cycle is your best one. I'm Stefan from Breaking to PE, and I see you in the next video.